Shall we begin with the fact that the San Francisco 49ers are being coached currently by a cokehead? Oh, excuse me, a reformed cokehead? Should we start there? Or should we start with the fact that the actual head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, was in a tremendous car accident a couple of weeks ago and no one said a word? While the San Francisco 49ers are doing all that they can to smear the name of Brandon Ayuk and have been pretty successful at it, and Brandon Ayuk has certainly helped them in them painting and confirming narratives about his wherewithal and his mental capacity and health these days. The San Francisco 49ers had a situation and were successfully able to cover up that situation. And none of their local beat writers, none of their podcasters, none of their, guys had to follow them online and super fans and super bloggers and all that stuff. Nobody associated in and around the team reported the information, the public information of the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, getting into a serious car accident, a car accident that almost took his eye out. None of that information was reported for upwards of almost 13 days. It took that information to be provided to the public. And what a coincidence, they announced that information on the day that training camp opened for the 49ers. So your coach, who is the persona non grata out there, he is the one. John Lynch is the GM. He certainly has some cachet to himself. But Shanahan is the guy. He is the face. Even though Brock Purdy makes a lot of money, Christian McCaffrey makes a lot of money, there's a lot of stars on this team, Trent Williams. It doesn't matter. The face of that organization is the coach. The face of your organization gets into a serious car accident where he almost lost an eye, according to his own best friend, man's Chris Sims. And no one knew about this, or the people that knew about it knew to keep it low. Why are we keeping it low? In the same mold of the 49ers are able to air out Brandon Ayuk and all his transgressions. In the same mold that Tony Romo just got popped for OWI, and that was released immediately. But Kyle Shanahan gets to have broken ribs, almost lost an eye, cuts and bruises, all this type of stuff, has a concussion allegedly, and no one reports on it. All these insiders, all these people that are close to the organization, I got sources, I got people close to the information, and Kyle Shanahan is able to get hurt and not that far from not only the stadium, but not far from his crib, out there in Palo Alto, and no one says not one syllable about it for almost 2 whole weeks? So let me get this straight. Diana Rossini and Mike Vrabel were carrying on an affair, a work-husband relationship, whatever you want to classify it, for half a decade at minimum. Half a decade. And when that information finally came tricking out, everyone jumped on the fact, well, where is the media? Where is the journalism? How come it's not being reported? This needs to be taken to the highest, level and be judged accordingly. How come mum is the word on the San Francisco 49ers being able to basically hide the fact that the face of their franchise, the face of their organization, was in a serious car accident and no one said a word? Anytime Tiger Woods gets behind a car and does anything, it's being reported. Anytime Tiger Woods is being popped for something, the media seizes on it quick, fast, in a hurry. But when it comes to Kyle Shanahan, when it comes to Diana Rossini and Mike Vrabel, nobody says a word until it becomes public information. Then once the public gets a hold of it, you can no longer retain those rights anymore. So Kyle Shanahan, we'll jump right into the screen. Your man's Kyle Shanahan, and let me make sure I get the right screen up. There we go. All right. These are what we know as of right now. Kyle Shanahan was taken by paramedics to a local hospital where he spent much of the day before he was released after being involved in a car accident. We'll get to the part of Schefter's name being here because this is all fugazi. Palo Alto Lieutenant Nicholas Martinez said drugs and alcohol were not involved and no one was cited for the collision. The other driver was not injured. They're trying to water this down to make it seem like a big deal. If it is not a big deal, why did it take almost 2 weeks for you to report it? If this accident was not a big deal, if this was such a non-story, why was this being held from the public? Even though it was public record, why was the people that are hired to cover all things 49ers and cover all things NFL not releasing information about one of the more premier and noteworthy head coaches in the NFL getting into a serious car accident? And while they're trying to water down the injuries in this car accident, let me tell you the injuries. He broke his nose, 3 ribs, his hand, and needed more than 40 stitches in his face and suffered a severe concussion. Now, let me ask you again. Does that sound like a nothing accident that should have been, oh, we forgot to even mention our head coach got into a car accident, but it was no big deal, just a small fender bender. 3 broken ribs, 40 stitches in his face, a concussion, and broke his hand and his nose. And I'm supposed to believe that's not a big deal. The head coach of a team that likes to think they're going to be a Super Bowl contender this year leaves the gig, or apparently leaves the chiropractor, if you believe what his best friend, the godfather to his children, who he shares matching tattoos with, Chris Sims says. Chris Sims is saying he was leaving the chiropractor. Now, why he's releasing that information 2 weeks after the fact when he knew clearly, he said he knew right away that it happened. But now that the information is public, now he's trying to add his piece to it, and let's take that with a grain of salt because we now know he's obviously too close to the story, so he's going to try to provide slant and cover for his mans. Allegedly, he's leaving the chiropractor, or allegedly he's leaving the gig over there at Levi Stadium, heading back home, gets into his car accident, and they're telling us where he suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Those non-life-threatening injuries are a broken nose, broken ribs, broken hand, and 40 stitches to his face, and a concussion. Something about somebody in the NFL suffering a concussion and those injuries being non-life-threatening is extremely troubling. Be that as it may, it's the Shield. They get to write their own narratives. But let's take a look at the timeline of how this operates with how this story was actually being reported. So we're going to play Internet Detective. Let's go to, where's the one on the team? Okay, so the team announced about this happening on Saturday at 12 noon. Let's keep an eye on that time, 12 noon sharp, okay? Y'all should peep that. So they released their statement. Coach Shanahan was involved in a car accident last week. Now, they're saying last week. That does not add up with the math. So off rip, we got some stories that are conflicting. He was involved in a car accident last week where he suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Again, this man suffered a concussion, a severe concussion. So he didn't just say a mild concussion like a player does sometimes in a game. They said a severe concussion, and they're labeling it as a non-life-threatening injury. Coach Shanahan will participate in team activities on a limited basis at the start of training camp while he recovers, yada, 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 right? So that's at noon, right? Adam Schefter, insider, breaks the story at what time? 12:01. 12:01, Adam Schefter breaks the story. So 12 noon, the 49ers announce, oh, by the way, as training camp opens, our coach ain't going to be here. So by the way, when all the cameras come in and all the media come in and you're expecting to see Kyle Shanahan, oh, by the way, you're not going to see Kyle Shanahan because Kyle Shanahan got into a car accident. When the hell did that happen? Last week. The cops ain't saying that, but okay. So the team releases it at noon. 60 seconds later, Adam Schefter releases the news. And then 1 minute after that, the four-letter network releases a whole article with quotes from police and the GM, John Lynch, in this article. So wait a minute. The breaking news drops at noon. Schefter tweets it out 1 minute later. And then a minute later after that, ESPN has a whole ass article with quotes from most parties that were in and around it outside of Shanahan and people involved in the accident. That doesn't ring as a little collusionary to you all? As we have talked about Kawhi and the Clippers and all the nonsense that went on there. As we have talked about Jalen Brunson and the contract, giving the Knicks a discount because his godfather is the GM and his pops is the assistant coach and all the nepotism around that. This doesn't fall right in line with that. You tell me. Team announces it at noon. 1 minute later, the biggest insider in the sport drops the bomb that it happened. And then a minute after that, there's a whole ass article with quotes from all the necessary parties that, again, try to water down the impact of this accident, even though, again, he broke his nose, 3 ribs, his hand, needed more than 40 stitches in his face, and suffered a severe concussion during a July 14th car crash. So what are we talking about? Somebody make sense of where we're at here. Now, this may not seem like a crazy important story or a valid story, but what I want to do here is not only just talk about sports and why a team won and lost and all the usual stuff, but this story is not being reported like it should. This story is not being talked about like it should, because on these popular platforms, these large platforms, they're all in bed with the Shield. None more so than ESPN, who is literally owned by the league. So the NFL owns ESPN. We've talked about it when it came to Ryan Clark last week. We've talked about it prior in terms of collusion with Kaepernick when that was popping off, despite what Hove is telling you. Like, all this stuff just keeps showing how in bed all these media companies are with the NFL. And I get it. It's a relationship. They need content that drives ratings, which drives ad revenue. And the league needs a home to be able to produce their own content. So I get it. There is a relationship. There's always going to be some kind of, cohesiveness between a sports media network and a sports league. That needs to be a partnership. However, when does the partnership cross the line into clearly ESPN was protecting Kyle Shanahan? More specifically, Adam Schefter, who, oh, by the way, wrote a book about Kyle Shanahan's father, Mike Shanahan. So clearly there was mob ties there. So again, the biggest insider in the game just so happens to be really close with the whole Shanahan family. So is it a surprise that when an accident happens to where it leads to a concussion, broken hand, broken ribs, broken nose, 40 stitches, that the largest insider in the game, who just so happens to have a relationship with that family, multiple layers, decides not to publish the story, not to run with the story. But when it came to Tony Romo, oh, that tweet came from him quick, fast, in a hurry. As soon as that Tony Romo tweet dropped, because he's on the competing network, and I'm assuming he doesn't have the same mob ties with the Romo family as he does with the Shanahan family, he was able to just tweet that out and keep it pushing. Let that aggregate and do numbers. But when it comes to his mans in them, when it comes to the Shanahan family, well, let me keep this low. How do y'all want to proceed? If this was Mike Tomlin, do you think the people in Pittsburgh would have sat on this information for 2 weeks? Do you think the Pittsburgh Gazette or whatever the main paper is would not run the story? This is very, very collusionary. I don't know if collusionary is a word, but let's assume it is. This has collusion written all over it. If you're telling me that 2 weeks ago your head coach gets caught up and gets into a little fender bender, it happens, you get rear-ended, stuff like that, but okay, cool. Oh, by the way, that happened. I forgot. Oh, what happened to you over the summer? Oh, I actually got into a car accident, a couple of weeks ago. It was kind of crazy. Oh, where? Wow, okay. No, this man was laid up in the hospital. This man was laid up in the hospital. Okay, so that is going to be a story that requires more reporting. How did the hospital staff not leak the information? How did the NFL security, when something like that happens, NFL security is involved. 49er security is involved. And when that happens, when these insiders and these beat guys and these reporters have their sources, you can't tell me Schefter, Rappaport, whoever you consider as a top insider in the game, they didn't have this information. Chris Sims was literally on his show saying, yeah, every day I would talk to my wife and we would be stunned that the news hadn't broken yet. This is the same Chris Sims that almost let it slip that him and Shanahan were openly talking about Rossini and Mike Vrabel and how everyone knew that it was an open secret that they were smashing, getting it in, whatever you want to classify it. So he let that slip on air, but he didn't let slip on air that his mans, who he has, matching tattoos with, who he is the godfather to one of his children with, didn't want to let it slip that his mans was caught up in a really bad accident where he almost lost an eye, they said. I don't know, man. Y'all let me know. If y'all don't think it's a big deal, cool. But to me, when we talk about where this media thing is going, and I have obviously an invested interest into it because I've been in this shit for almost 20 joints. When I keep seeing blatant forms of just cover up, blatant forms of collusion, and no one cares. I mean, I know we don't care when it comes to politics. That's been clear. But at some point, a lot of the times, especially in this country, they put sports on a bigger pedestal in terms of piousness than politics. Now we're at the point where we don't even care about it in sports anymore. We don't even care. I find that extremely troubling. Because if we could go from Rossini and Vrabel was a bombshell and it was a salacious story and there was a lot of stuff to it. There was TMZ, there was photos, it was all the things. Even TMZ, where was TMZ in this? They got their story, but they normally are ahead of the game on a lot of this stuff, right? They're normally way ahead of most people. Where were they in this? Where were they in this? I find it extremely hard to fathom the way the direction media and sports media specifically, because that means more to me. It is really difficult to just assume everything's going to be right. Everything is going to right the ship. Everything is going to work itself out. We're going to come back to some kind of normalcy at some point. No, I don't see it. It is extremely suspicious when like I said, if this was Tomlin, if Tony Dungy was still in the league, if this was Ray Rhodes, if this was Jim Caldwell, if this was Lovie Smith, if this was any of them, would they be given the same grace as a Kyle Shanahan? Kyle Shanahan, who is a Nepo baby, who is best friends with another Nepo baby in Chris Sims, and they have both risen to prominence. One deserved, another failing upwards. They both had the right last name to get into the NFL and carve out whatever career they decided they wanted for themselves. Along that way, you build relationships. When you are a child and you grow up in those NFL circles, you make lifelong friends along the way, and just that last name carries a lot of clout. So when you get in trouble, it's treated differently. When Brandon Ayuk is out here big wilding, to my knowledge, he's the first Ayuk of his name that has reached this status. So he has less protection. But when you're a Shanahan, not only are you protected, but off the strength of your father, you're protected. So you have the clout of what you have done individually, right? No one's debating how hard Kyle Shanahan works and how good he is, right? But the fact that he has that last name, which now piggybacks off of his dad's reputation, winning multiple Super Bowls and being held in high regard, he gets to live off of that too. So people that would protect his father will feel indebted to his father, that are in the league because of his father, will now automatically protect the son. So the son now gets caught out there in an accident with a concussion, broken ribs, nose, face, all the stuff, severe concussion. And no one says anything. Absolutely wild. We hit the chat. Lakers in the house. Good suspicions to have. I mean, look, it certainly is super suspicious to me. 1 and 1 is always 2. This to me is 1 and 1 equaling 2. When you have Adam Schefter, who's supposed to be breaking news, his whole clout is built around he has information before everybody else, and he breaks it. He is supposed to be the equivalent of Woj and now Shams on the NFL side. His job is to break news. But to get to being the number one guy as an insider, you also have to cultivate relationships. And clearly, Adam Schefter is biased in this information because he is too close. He is too close to the Shanahans. Why is he the one breaking the story? He's too close. He did a book with his dad. Why is he the one that is breaking the story when the team releases a press release at noon? Schefter has a tweet at 12:01, and then the whole four-letter network has a full detailed story at 12:02. That tells me you knew about this shit long time, that you went running around chasing down detectives and stuff, getting information. Why wasn't this an ongoing, developing story? That's normally how that would have went. You would have gave us the tea immediately. Hey, Kyle Shanahan involved in a car accident. More details to come, but you know, we'll see how severe it is. It's unknown whether it's severe or not. That would have been the blurb. People went crazy, you know, retweeting it, whatever, sending it to group chats, all of that. Then as the information when it came out, oh, okay, he's okay. He's in the hospital. He's being looked at, whatever. The other person involved is okay. The story would have been developing over the days. Why did they decide to dump everything in a span of 120 seconds? They took 2 weeks of information and dumped it on everybody in a span of 120 seconds. And then said, oh, by the way, training camp's open. Let's focus on the players. Let's focus on Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. Let's focus on that. Your coach ain't here. Why ain't your coach here? Well, we just told y'all. Yeah, but you said it happened last week. But the cops are in the ESPN story saying it happened 2 weeks ago. Is someone going to make sense of this or not? National media pundits work for the NFL via their network, their media network. Yeah, and that's why everything is, it's hard to trust the information that you're being told. I can tell you specifically, that's why any time a report is being put out there, I always have to take a step back and try to look at whose angle is this from? Is this from the team's angle? Is this from the player angle or the player agent's angle? Or is this from a media angle? There's always three sides. Let me say there's always, three parts of the truth. One version, the other version, then the actual truth is in the middle. With media, with sports information, especially today, it's probably four. There's going to be the team POV, the player POV, the network's POV, and then the actual truthful POV. And this is where we're stuck. We're stuck in that spot right now. We are absolutely handcuffed to where we can't take anything at face value because we have been lied to. We have been tricked. We have been coerced to believe something that's not true for so long now. We don't trust anything. When a tweet drops, we all double check. Is that even the right account? Is that a fake account or not? Is that real? Is that the real Shams? Is that the real Schefter? Is that just a bot? Is that just an aggregate account making some shit up just to get clicks and views and to monetize? Where's the information coming from? We have been duped so many times that this is where we're at now. Where when information breaks, our immediate first thing is that even true? There was a time when that wasn't even a consideration. Can you imagine if the Michael Jordan sudden retirement would have happened today, where the greatest player ever in the prime of his career decides to walk away? Can you imagine what the tweets would have done with that information? Do you imagine the amount of lies that would have been told just off the information? Can you imagine? Imagine if somehow at noon, Victor Wembanyama retires from the NBA. We wouldn't believe it. We would not believe it. We were like, no, that has to be a fake account. That has to be a bot. That has to be AI. That has to be something. Because we've become numb to the fact that, people will lie to you. People will lie to you for their own financial gain or for their own just clout gain. Jordan retired in the middle of his prime. And no one was like, is this true? Only from the standpoint of, is he actually retiring? But the source of the information was clean, was accepted. Now, when this information drops, it's like, one, is that a real account? Two, is that real account by a person that's actually connected? Three, is it AI? Four, now we get into the four sides of truths, where the media slant, the team slant, the player slant, and then the actual truth somewhere in between. That's the level of vetting we have to do just to decide if this information is accurate or not. Do you understand how taxing that is? Hey, maybe some of y'all don't care. I care because as someone that at one point in time wanted to be a writer, wanted to be a reporter, wanted to be a journalist, the watering down of the journalism piece, even though I was lucky enough to get out and pivot into my media career in a different way, there's still a spot of me that cares about how news is being reported and how information gets released. This story taking multiple weeks in a coordinated effort as a story dump. I've explained over the years here, whether it's on YouTube or my podcast, there are story dumps. Fridays, if you want a story to drop or be released to the public, but you want to hide it, you release it on a Friday. Why do you release it on a Friday? Because the sports talk shows won't be able to get their hands on it until Monday because they operate on a Monday to Friday schedule. Back in the day, if you wanted to hide a story, it still happens time to time, but now with live streaming, podcasting, you can just drop whenever you want and still have the conversation. But there was a point in time before all of that where we lived and died with the sports shows. We lived and died with the newspapers. Those normally ran on a Monday to Friday schedule. So if you wanted to get ahead of something and bury it, you drop that shit on a Friday afternoon. You got a story that you don't want to get out, or you got a story that you know would go crazy if it dropped on a Monday, but you're trying to duck that smoke, drop it on a Friday afternoon. That way, by the time Monday come around, It's already been a couple of days. The momentum of the story and the salaciousness has already diminished just for the fact of it's been 48 hours since that information was released. That's how it used to be. Now you can drop information and people are going live immediately. People are dropping podcasts immediately. Working in television, the coordination that has to happen to break into live programming on TV, it is not easy. Whereas now, like when the LeBron, the Philly stuff dropped, I was live within minutes talking about it. You didn't have that option 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. You didn't have that option. If LeBron would have signed with Philly 30 years ago, you couldn't talk about it until Monday if it was a Friday thing or a weekend thing. I don't know, man. Y'all let me know. Lakers. Sports shows are not credible nowadays. Yeah, especially when you look at the talent. When you look at the talent of who's on there, and let's go ahead to this. We'll jump ahead a little bit. I was saving this in the talk for later, but let's go ahead and go there. Look at what ESPN is trying to subject us to this upcoming football season. And this tweet kind of sums it up. No Ryan Clark, no Bart Scott, even though I'm not mad at that. I'm not the biggest Bart Scott guy. No Ryan Clark, no Bart Scott, but plenty of Dan Orlovsky, Dan Graziano, and Tim Hasselbeck as NFL analysts. I guess that's how the suits want ESPN to look. Look, the barstoolification of ESPN is near complete. The barstoolification of the four-letter network is near completion. And this is what they want because this is what sells. Let's go ahead and be all the way real and have the conversation. This is still, despite growing numbers that would make you to lead otherwise at some point in the near future, this is still a predominantly white country. This is a predominantly white country, and the people that are in power are still, by and large, predominantly white men specifically. Be that, and with that information, who do you think they would feel more comfortable with on their air, on their televisions, talking about sports? Even though sports, especially the two biggest ones here in this country, in basketball and football, are predominantly black sports. Predominantly. The people that are in charge, though, are not black. The people that are in charge, though, are not black men. The people that are in charge look like Greenberg, Orlovsky, Graziano, and Tim Hasselbeck. So they are way more comfortable putting these people in position to win, to talk about predominantly black athletes, as opposed to Ryan Clark, Cam Newton, and even to a way lesser degree, the Bart Scotts of the world. This is just where we're at. I'm not even saying racism because I know that's now a new word that's like a buzzword. It's a trigger word for people. But you tell me what this is. When we're heading into NFL season, we're heading into ESPN is going to do the Super Bowl. I can tell you, as someone that used to work there and was part of some of the early preliminary conversation about what they're trying to do for the Super Bowl, this is an extremely important year for that company. That company is going all in on football because it leads to them hosting or airing the Super Bowl. Now that you have that information, explain to me why Cam Newton, who is a former NFL MVP, went to a Super Bowl. Ryan Clark, who went and won a Super Bowl, are no longer on the network. But somehow Darren Orlovsky, who is really good, so this isn't a shot at Dan, but let's call it what it is, Darren Orlovsky, who is more famous for running out of the back of an end zone for a team that went 0-16, is prominently displayed. Tim Hasselbeck, journeyman football player, prominently displayed. Dan Graziano, who I remember as a regular beat reporter back in the day here in the tri-state area. And Greenberg, who sold out his radio partner of the multiple decades because he wanted his own shine. And we're not even going to get into Peter Schrager, although it was announced Peter Schrager, the dude that had the back and forth with Ryan Clark, that Ryan Clark is saying that had nothing to do with his firing. I'm sorry, Ryan, you're entitled to your opinion. I think that's bullshit, and I think you know that's bullshit. Peter Schrager is about to get his own daily talk show. You peep game? You peep game? Peter Schrager is about to get his own daily talk show. Ryan Clark got to go. Cam Newton got to go. Bart Scott got to go. But Peter Schrager, open up the vault. Open up the vault. He needs a time slot. Peter Schrager needs a time slot, a daily time slot, not a YouTube stream, not something only exclusive on the app. He's getting a full-fledged television show. And yet Ryan Clark wants us to believe that his back and forth had nothing to do with him being let go. Now, while I'm not sitting here saying that back and forth was the direct reason, was the sole reason as to why Ryan Clark was let go, not saying that. What I am saying is that just shows how much they love that dude. So the fact that you had a back and forth with that dude, that might not have been the only reason, but that certainly played a part in them letting you go. Now, whether he's going to come to grips with that at some point or doesn't want to admit that because that might make him feel even worse. I mean, the man was crying on the pivot talking about being let go. So clearly, emotionally, it has taken a toll on him, as you would expect. But the fact that he's trying to say, no, that had nothing to do with it, brother, they gave that man a daily talk show. Peter Schrager, who has no credibility outside of he looks the part and somebody up top loves him. That's the only credibility. That's the only resume things that stand out. Looks the part, was at NFL Network. That's it. Now at ESPN, and now he's being fast-tracked. The people that have daily talk shows, again, because I work in sports media, I can give you the different perspective. Sports daily talk shows are held in high regard. Those are for the bigger personalities. Look at the four-letter network and tells me who has a daily show. Pat McAfee has a daily show. Stephen A. Fraud A. Smith has a daily show. Who else has a daily show? We could talk about PTI that's grandfathered in. Who else as an individual personality? Mina Kimes is phenomenal. It's just a podcast that gets streamed on TV. It is not a TV show first. It is a podcast first, and then it gets repurposed onto television. This Schrager show will be a full-out TV show. Who else has that? Yet Ryan Clark wants me to believe that him beefing with that dude on air and Schrager telling him, do not belittle me, had nothing to do with him being let go under a year later. Okay, Ryan. If that's the game you're running, if that's the tea you're sipping, salute. If that's the tea you're sipping, salute. I'm going to go against that and say, nope, they got you up out of there because not only did they not view you as viable enough to continue with going forward, but it doesn't help that you went toe-to-toe with the dude that they hold in high regard. So while no, it was not the only reason, it may be not even the catalyst, but it played a part. And if he doesn't want to admit that yet, that's on him. But as someone that was in Bristol, that can tell you how some of that goes, it's all about relationships. It's all about networking. It's all about who likes you. Promotion is not just about hard work. It is about who you know and how well do you know them. Now that, just to wrap up the bow on the Shanahan thing, the person who is going to be in Shanahan's stead or in Shanahan's place during the time of him recovering from broken nose, 3 ribs, a hand, 40 stitches, is going to be this man. If this man does not look familiar, it's because this man has gone a long way to rehab his image. Even if I say his name, you still might not know who he is. Chris Forrester. Chris Forrester is the assistant head coach and offensive line coach. Why does that stand out? Because this man was in Miami. He was with the Dolphins. And I believe he was offensive line coach with the Dolphins. And then he was let go from the Dolphins. And it wasn't a simple thing of, oh, we just, different philosophy or, any of that type of stuff, or wasn't good at his job or anything like that. No, it was something way more nefarious, salacious. This man was the coach who recorded himself snorting lines of coke. This is that dude. So the 49ers go from being led into training camp not by Kyle Shanahan because he was in an accident that seems to be quasi-salacious or nefarious but is not being reported. But they keep telling us it's not a big deal. It's not life-threatening. They go from that to now being coached or at least led through part of training camp by a known cokehead. This is the Shield. This is the NFL. This is the National Checkdown League. This is where we're at, where a cokehead, a reformed cokehead, can come back and end up being not only the offensive line coach so he could get his old job back in the sense of doing the same title, getting the same title back, but then he can also be the assistant head coach. He can stand next to the man. So wait, you're telling me this league that, again, is trying to run out Brandon Ayuk, this team, John Lynch and them, who are throwing all types of shade and questioning the mental makeup of Brandon Ayuk, have taken in a reformed cokehead and have elevated him not only to where he was prior to recording himself snorting lines of coke in Miami to offensive line coach, but Kyle Shanahan, who is held in high regard, names him the assistant head coach? I would love for someone to make sense of this to me, because I cannot make any sense of this. How can the 49ers go from Kyle Shanahan, a Nepo baby, but at least a Nepo baby of privilege, of acumen, of winning, and now, while he's on the mend, recovering from a severe concussion and multiple injuries from a car accident we didn't know about until they decided to do a Saturday noon news dump, they're now going to be led by a reformed cokehead, a dude that was openly and recording himself snorting lines on camera, multiple lines, not like on some, in the party, in the club, and you see someone do the little whatever, taking a little quick nose bump. No, this man was old school, New Jack City, snorting lines, long lines, Scarface shit, snorting lines, and recording himself and talking about how much he loved it, while currently employed as a NFL assistant coach. Not only does he go away for a couple of years and reform his image, he's able to spin the block and get not only his job back, but then be elevated to assistant head coach. And now that Shanahan has this mysterious car accident, now this man is the acting head coach. Lakers in the chat. Colin Cowherd is trash, and he has a daily show as well. Yes, I was more talking about ESPN directly, but yes, Colin Cowherd has a daily show. But at least Colin Cowherd, he's a guy that I would say is grandfathered in, right? He's another guy that's grandfathered in. But when we're looking at specifically ESPN, because again, all eyes are going to be on them the entire year because everything is leading to the Super Bowl and their production of it. The only people that have been gifted shows outside of PTI, because that's grandfathered in, and the first chance they get, and don't, the company has tried to get them up out of there. But they can't, because it still does numbers. And those guys are a mainstay, and they are part of the evolution of what we now know as debate television. So it's hard to get them up out of there. But now that they've cleared the decks in terms of who they prefer to have on air, look at who they have empowered. For daily shows, it's only two. Stephen A. McAfee, who get Boku bread, big bucks, and now get Peter Schrager's. That's a huge drop-off in terms of talent, acumen, and personality going from Fraud A, take it or leave it. Pat McAfee, same thing, take it or leave it. But at least I could be like, all right, I see why they're doing it. I see why they're going to capitalize on this person's personality and leverage it for money and give them a platform. I can see it. Peter Schrager, I don't see it. Which then gets me to thinking, because I know this industry for being in it for so long, I'm like, okay, who does he know? Who likes him up top? Because that's the only justification. Same thing with this cokehead coach. Chris Forrester clearly is liked in NFL circles. The fact that he could be on camera, not caught on camera. He recorded himself on camera doing multiple lines of cocaine. It's not about what you know. Despite us having to tell our children, our loved ones, people that we care about, people that we try to mentor, and we want them to do, work hard, and you'll get there. Work hard. If you just do it, be consistent, show up, you'll be rewarded. The world keeps giving us examples of that being complete and utter bullshit. This man is a reformed cokehead. And don't give me we believe in second chances, athletes get second chances. Don't give me that. Don't give me that. What does this man know as an offensive line coach? How good of an offensive line coach is he that he can be a reformed crackhead or cokehead? Let me not put some on that might not be true. But we do know he's a reformed cokehead. Maybe not a crackhead, but cokehead. How good of an offensive line coach is he that he can bounce back from snorting lines of coke, self-recording himself, and sending it to someone? With a player, you can almost understand why you would give an athlete a second chance, because that person is more directly involved with the outcome of a game. I am more inclined to give a guy like Brandon Ayuk another chance, despite his mental status and capacity at the moment, as opposed to a reformed cokehead who just so happens to be an O-line coach. I think I could go find another O-line coach faster than I could go find someone that has even the skill set of a Brandon Ayuk. But somehow the 49ers have less of a problem rehiring or hiring a reformed cokehead as opposed to giving Brandon Ayuk an extension. Make it make sense. All right, let's see where we at here. What do we want to get into? And speaking of Colin Cowherd, the person who was sitting in for him, Jason McIntyre, made a ridiculous statement and an incorrect statement. Keenan Allen was their best receiver. He's been cut by half the league, Jason McIntyre. Jason McIntyre has been given plenty of opportunities. He's the sidekick to Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd is still a solo host by and large, but Jason McIntyre is seen or perceived as his sidekick. Jason McIntyre made a statement that is not only laughable, it's just flat out not true. And even on the Elon app, they got at him in the community notes. Because this man has only played for 2 teams in his career, the Chargers and the Bears. And the fact of the matter is that, as you see here, Keenan Allen has never been cut by an NFL team. So this is another person that's been empowered to be given a platform, to be given an opportunity, and is on the air talking about the NFL and doesn't have a clue of what he's talking about. Yet these are the people that are given platforms. These are the people that are empowered. Again, this is akin to Peter Schrager. I put Jason McIntyre in the same boat as Peter Schrager, as your Cal Brandts, guys like that. Whereas they're not athletes, they're like quasi host, moderator, entertainer type guys, but not even, if you really listen to them, they're not really saying anything that's noteworthy. But again, this all goes back to, this is where we're at in the industry. And this is why the industry has been on a steep decline for a number of years. Okay, so Jason Tatum, cosplay Kobe. Cosplay Kobe did a thing, right? If you are unfamiliar, Jason Tatum ain't nothing but cosplay Kobe. That man tries to walk like Kobe, talk like Kobe, dress like Kobe, play like Kobe. And now with his recent statements, he's even throwing shade at former teammates just like Kobe. Jason Tatum shares a motivational message on being a leader. Quote, being around somebody that feels like they know it all. I don't want to be around that person. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to learn from somebody else. This is a direct shot at now former teammate and current LeBron teammate, Jaylen Brown. Because the knock on Jaylen Brown when he was coming into the league and throughout his tenure in Boston and even now in Philly, especially post this deal with Boston, this trade with Boston, is that he think he know it all. He think he the smartest person in the room. So Jason Tatum, who's not even creative enough to come out with shade, original shade for Jaylen Brown, he's just regurgitating takes that were existing in the draft combine process for Jaylen Brown. So not only is he cosplay Kobe, where he tries to dress like Kobe, talk like Kobe, play like Kobe, he's throwing former shade like Kobe throwing shade at Shaq, but at least Kobe was original in his shade at Shaq. Cosplay Kobe, Jason Tatum can't even do that. He's regurgitating all the trash narratives from the draft process for Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown fired back, and he kind of echoed the sentiments of me by calling Jason. Let me see if I can find that. Let me find that real quick. Let me come off the screen and find that, because that is important. And I see the chat. I'll get to you in a second. But cosplay Kobe is a real thing. Cosplay Kobe. Let's see. Jaylen Brown. That's not right. Jaylen Brown. Where's the IG? Where's the IG response? There it is. Or is that real? Is that real or is that a parody? It's tweeted from a parody account. See, here we go. The information. Where's that information? Was that information sent from a fake account? Was I just duped? I thought he clapped back. It looks like a real screen grab from his IG account. Let me just go ahead and type in IG. I think this was a fake story. Yeah, I think this is a fake story, but let's go ahead and have something at it. Let's have some fun with it anyway. So this is allegedly a screenshot from Jaylen Brown's IG account. Real intelligence is knowing who you are. Insecurity is spending your whole life pretending to be him. And then a little snake emoji aka Black Mamba. Because again, Jason Tatum, he think he Kobe. I want this to be true. It doesn't look like it's true, but I want this to be true. So the fact that Jason Tatum is trying to establish himself as a voice, is trying to establish himself as someone that's trying to stand out. Because again, if you remember, just like Russell Westbrook was given the side eye to Kevin Durant when he won the MVP, Jason Tatum was given the side eye to Jaylen Brown when Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP. So clearly there was shade. Clearly there was animosity. Clearly that man thinks he should be the one. Now he gets a chance to prove it. Now with that roster as currently constituted, he gets a chance to show that he could be that. Are you going to put up numbers like Kobe did post Shaq, where it was a whole bunch of great numbers, absolutely no winning? Celtics are not going for that. They want the Kobe-like numbers in production, but also W's. The way that roster looks right now, where they're depending on a Hugo Gonzalez to get it shaken, it's not going to happen. But if you think you Kobe, let me see it. Tatum think he Kobe, right? Cosplay Kobe. Let me see it. Just made it worse. All right, let me hit the chat. Lakers, national media is dying. ESPN paying McAfee and Stephen A. Smith to keep them afloat. But them and Fox have let go of a lot of guys because of national media is the least educated. There's a lot there. Okay, so yes, I do think, though, in the sense of when it comes to television, right? Television is an entertainment product. Television as we knew it back in the day in terms of it's about breaking news and hard-hitting 30 for 30s, unearthing shit and outside the lines and all that type of programming. All that shit is a wrap because the E in ESPN stands for entertainment. Never forget that. So what is entertaining today? What gets the most clicks, views, retweets, shares, aggregation today? Salaciousness, stories, loud personalities, bombastic streaming, like all this stuff, we have brought this upon ourselves. All of this stuff, we are the ones to blame. We are the ones to blame because we have given eyeballs, we have given likes, shares, retweets that signal to these corporations that this is what we like, this is what we prefer. And then if we're not the ones, then they have now engineered bots that can mimic what we used to do for free back in the day. I have tried to not engage with this type of content, but that content still comes to my algorithm because there's probably millions of bots that are trained off of how myself and others, probably you out there, used to act on social media. So now even though I don't want to see it, it's still going to get pushed to me as if I was the one that's still interacting with this content. That's how the game has been flipped. So we are at fault. Because we built these brands and these accounts and these aggregators and giving them views and being able to empower them to be monetized, we now can't be mad at the industry for copying, pasting what they saw work on social media. We can't. You can't get mad at the fall of the network for trying to now turn themselves into a more polished Bleacher Report. Can't get mad at that. They see what worked. And they have hired people that used to work at Bleacher Report to help build their social media up just like how they did at Bleacher Report, House of Highlights, all those types of spots. So when you're wondering, well, how come they changed? How come they're different? How come there's no more storytelling and no more journalism at ESPN? Because we, the audience, have dictated to them that we don't care about that anymore. I know it's hard to look ourselves in the mirror, but sometimes you have to have that accountability and look yourself in the mirror and be like, you know what? I'm partly to blame. I am partly to blame. When I sent that link to the group chat thinking it was funny, I shouldn't have did that. Because these apps can track all the stuff that you do with their links. He shared that link. Even if it's to mock it, they don't care. You shared it. You engaged with it. That's a positive for them. So they mark that. This tweet did good. He shared it. So let's give him more tweets like that so he can share those. That's how the algorithm works. That's how this works. Copy and paste. Give them more, more, more. If you engage in it, they're going to keep giving it to you. That's how these things are built. So when it comes to TV, the ratings were declining because social media and the internet became more and more of a thing. How can we combat that? Well, let's hire the people that they like. McAfee had his own YouTube thing, was running the numbers up all on his own. ESPN said, we need that. We're going to pay for that. And McAfee leveraged it to the fact that he still owns all his shit. And now he just licensed it to the 4-letter network. And now he's going to get allegedly upwards of over $60 million a year because he built his own thing up. And ESPN doesn't know how to build that within their own ecosystem anymore. So now they have to go out and buy it and license it. Why do you think they have Inside the NBA with Shaq, Barkley, and Kenny Smith and EJ in them? Because they kept trying to do their own version of it, and it sucked. They put Stephen A. on there. They put Magic Johnson on there. They tried to put Jalen Rose on there. As much as they tried to copy and paste what TNT was doing, it didn't work. So what happens when that ship started to sink at TNT? ESPN went and scooped it up and said, now this is ours. Because clearly we can't build one in-house. So we'll just go take the one that's actually doing numbers and we'll just go buy that. We'll license that from you over here and we'll put that over here. This is the tough conversation that people don't want to have. We are responsible for what we are now mad at and what we view at on our phones, on our laptops, on our televisions. We are the ones to blame. We saw the play and we still engaged. We knew the play and still engaged. Ladies in the chat, old media had a lot of gimmicks that new sports fans don't like or care for. Debate shows as entertainment, but how many exist successfully now? Well, you have to define what success is, right? Because television ratings don't equal social media numbers, right? Like a good television show, a good sports talk television show, a debate show, if you got 100K, you good. You safe. As someone that's worked in the media thing for a while now, you get 100K on your ratings, you good. Now, online, that ain't enough. Online, that is not enough. 100K online, that's like bare minimum. That's like minimum wage. That's like the poverty line. Television, 100K, you still good. Now, you're not thriving, but you're still good in terms of you can fight that you're impactful. I have worked for companies where I knew the show sucked, but somehow it would still eke out low 6-figure views, and the company felt that was a win. But now, if you have a high-profile talent that does a show, and that show can't even get, it will only get 6 figures on a stream or 6 figures on a clip, that's not viewed as prospering online. So the numbers are viewed differently. So yes, while I agree that new sports fans and they look at media and consume content differently, and the debate shows aren't hitting the same, they're hitting enough that they're able to keep their spots. Trust me, if FS1 and all those shows that most of us don't watch, but somehow it's on all the time, Somebody's watching those shows. And it goes back to my earlier point in terms of this country is still a predominantly white country. And the people that are in charge are still predominantly white. So we're not the ones that they're not counting us. We are a bonus to them. People that look like me are a bonus to their numbers. They're not focused on me. Their ads are not focused on me. Their their focus groups are not focused on me. The way that they choose talent, as we saw with the earlier picture of who ESPN is rolling out. Where's that photo? God damn it, I didn't close that. There we go. The way that they choose talent like this, they're not doing that with me in mind. And based off my own demographics, the likelihood is they're not doing it with you in mind. They're curating to a certain base. They're curating to a certain demo. This is the demo. This is it right here. This is who they want. This is who they want. This is also the ideal viewer / listener of who they're advertising to. Because that plays a part in it as well. We can't look past the fact that this shit is about money at the end of the day. They feel these people put them in good position to make them money in terms of ad revenue. They're not going to say anything crazy. They're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to be like Cam Newton with the crazy outfits. They're not going to be like Ryan Clark and be a proud, strident black man that will say the thing. These guys are going to show up, do their job, toe the line, give you what they feel is good effort, and go home. And rinse and repeat throughout the week. And you know who's going to like that? Advertisers. Because we're never in danger, no matter what story breaks outside of sports that might leak into sports. We have no worries that Dan Graziano is never going to say anything controversial. We have no concern that Tim Hasselbeck is going to say anything controversial. Lakers in the chat. That demo is going to nosedive. Could be wrong. I don't think anyone cares about these guys. Well, here's the thing. You and I do not care about those guys. Clearly, somebody up top who makes a lot of money to make the decision of who is on air or not does. And that's why it's a trick bag. That's why I could tell you from being in those offices and being in those circles, you would be amazed at who is held in high regard. People that you think have no motion on social media, no motion in your group chats, no motion in just casual conversation in terms of who's lit, is lit to them. And they're the decision makers. They're the gatekeepers. I know the prevailing notion is that the internet, YouTube, platforms like this has allowed gatekeeping to be lessened. That's true to a certain degree. But if you're trying to reach the level of the ESPN, you're still dealing with the gatekeepers. And those gatekeepers do not look like me. So if you're wondering how come these guys are on the air because we don't care about them, the bottom line is somebody important does. And that somebody looks more like them than they look like me. And that's the media thing in a nutshell. It truly is that. It truly is that. Just like any other place in corporate America, by the way. This is not something that is a monolith to just sports or exclusive to just sports media. This is what it is in corporate America. But because this involves television and because this is people that don't look like the athletes that they cover, it is so blatantly obvious. This is what we're looking at. This is what we are able to detect because it is so clear. And again, this is summertime stuff, right? This is not going to be the permanent lineup. However, this will be one of the rotational shows or the rotational lineups at some point throughout the year. When the season starts, they're going to have their big guns. You're going to see Mina Kimes. You're going to see Marcus Spears. You're going to see Booger McFarland. You're going to see those guys on there. Those guys ain't going nowhere, and those by design. However, this lineup will be a thing throughout the season. It's summertime. People are on vacation. People are taking time off, stuff like that. This is why you see this particular lineup. It just so happens to coincide with the layoff or the firings of Cam Newton and Ryan Clark and Bart Scott to a lesser degree. This ain't a one-off. This will be a thing. Let's see what else we got. We are searching the timeline just to make sure we're not missing anything. I don't think anything has broken since we've been on stream. I'm just checking. We're going to get into Steph Curry and his future or lack thereof in a little bit. Let's see. Oh, well, Draymond Green is lying about LeBron not going to the Warriors. We'll talk about that in conjunction with Wardell. Let me just make sure. And let's go to, okay, yep. Here's a clip from that same show. This is entertainment in 2026. I am completely against pedicures for dudes. You're a dude. You're not supposed to get pedicures. This isn't in line with Mad Dog Russo. This is in line with all the personalities that they have now brought in. Dan Graziano, who is just an NFL insider, is sitting on a desk on a show to be entertaining. He is a beat reporter. He is not entertaining. Mike Greenberg is a former journalist, and then he had a radio show, and then he pivoted that into a large, long-time running radio show that was one of the most boring listens I've ever had to endure. But again, it lasted for what, multiple decades, almost, I think, 20 plus years. And then you have Orlovsky, who I said, who is more known for running out the back of an end zone for a team that went 0-16 than anything else. But now, these three have been emboldened and empowered and platformed to be the voice of reason to talk about all things sports. If you told me they're only here to talk about NFL football, okay, you have an NFL insider, you have a moderator, and then you have a former quarterback. Okay, cool. They're sitting here talking about pedicures. The four-letter gang has chosen safe television over everything. 142 sincere. Yeah, and it's kind of been that way. This has been like a slow progression, right? Like, look, they got Jamel and Michael Smith up out of there. Levitard and them decided to walk away. Then they got Bomani up out of there. Like, if Stuart Scott wouldn't have died, they probably would have had to let him go. Can you imagine the outcry? Because look at all the SportsCenter guys, the classic SportsCenter guys, they all left. Dan Patrick, Oberman, Rich Eisen, they all left. Stuart Scott would have had to leave. The man who I think more than Stephen A. brought back ESPN from the depths of where they were and put them on a pedestal and gave them some sauce. They would have had to let Stuart Scott go. But that didn't happen. But Jamel, Michael Smith, Bomani, Ryan Clark, Cam Newton, and there's more. Tons more. And they all look a certain way. Safer television is this. Just a couple of dudes sitting around talking about pedicures in the middle of July, waiting for football season to get going. This network is so much about football. It's so much about NFL football because they're about to do their first ever Super Bowl that they have 3 dudes on here. Instead of talking about football, talking about pedicures. Okay. If they were just trying to be informative, it would make more sense than these 3 to be entertaining. And that in lies the point, right? That is where everything goes wrong, because you can't tell me we're supposed to be about entertainment and your view of entertainment is dudes sitting at a desk talking about dudes getting pedicures in the middle or towards the end of July. Training camps just opened. LeBron just signed with the Philadelphia 76ers. Kevin Durant is on the record talking about it. Stephen Curry is on the record talking about it. Draymond Green is on the record on his own dumb podcast talking about it. And you got 2 dudes that are related to the NFL heavily talking about pedicures. But yet you want to be taken as a serious news outfit, but also entertaining. When you're clearly in bed with the NFL by hiding the fact that Kyle Shanahan was in a serious car accident a couple weeks ago. And you lined up with the NFL and the 49ers, who are indirectly part owners of ESPN because the NFL owns 10% of ESPN. So, wow, let's go ahead and break this down. So the NFL owns 10% of ESPN. The 32 teams own the NFL. So that means the San Francisco 49ers own a piece of ESPN. So a coach of that team, the head coach, the face of the franchise, the face of the organization, gets into a car accident. And the biggest insider in the game is cool with the guy who was in the accident and his father, sits on the story, but sets up a coordinated release hours before training camp opens for that team and the world discovers that the head coach ain't there. They set up a coordinated news dump. At noon, you get a team press release. 12:01, that insider finally releases information. And 12:02, there's a whole story written by that same insider with details of that story. So the 49ers own a piece of ESPN, and ESPN held back information involving the head coach of the 49ers. And that's okay. Has the day of the former athlete as a sports analyst going away? No. Unless you want to talk about black ones. If you want to talk about black ones, that might be yes. And that's why you see a lot of athletes getting their own platform, because they have to. You have to. Gilbert Arenas should be on Amazon, any of these platforms. Gilbert Arenas is enough of a personality where he shouldn't have to go to Playmaker to have his show. Why can't Gilbert Arenas have his stuff on some kind of streaming platform that's tied to a legacy media company? Why? Why did Cam Newton have to do 4th and 1 on his own? Why? Why wouldn't NFL Network scoop that up when that was still its own thing? The way to get on now, whether you're an athlete, a former athlete, or a non-athlete that's just trying to be a creator in the space, is you have to do it on your own, and do it on your own for a minute before the legacy media companies will give you a sniff. Athletes have the luxury, because of their financial well-being and the fact that they have a built-in audience, which is their fans, where they can run the numbers up so fast that they could be a competitor to these legacy media companies right away. While it takes a platform like this one, because I'm not a former athlete, but I've been growing this channel for a minute, but it's nowhere near the numbers that if I were a former athlete and I just decided, hey, I'm just going to have a YouTube channel, I would be able to monetize within a week or two, if that long. And by monetizing, I'm able to make bread independently, and that allows me to go get sponsors just like these legacy media companies. That's the game now. If you're Gilbert Arenas, why would you go to a legacy media company when you could just build your own thing back up again? And we'll talk about that another day. But you could build up your own thing, leverage that, get sponsorships on your own, leverage with another company that has its own built-in ad revenue that you can eat off of. Does Gilbert Arenas even need Prime? Does he need to be on Amazon? I think the check would be bigger on Amazon. I could be off on that, maybe not. But if you get to retain your rights, if you go on Amazon, you're probably not going to retain your rights. So maybe that's the ownership play. But I mean, he was willing to sell. I mean, he sold his shit to Underdog once. Why wouldn't he sell it to Amazon? So, but is the day of the former athlete going away? Yes is the hard answer. No is the more nuanced answer, because if you're a legacy media company, you still need former athletes. The problem is they're just not going to be black. ESPN, didn't they just hire Taylor Lewan and whoever he does his show with? That's going to be a big show. Like, so that's two athletes. I don't know, is Taylor Lewan still playing? Let me see if I can find that story. Taylor Lewan. See if I can find that show. Where is it? What is it? Bussin' with the Boys or some shit like that? Ain't that the name of the show? Let's see. Yeah. So ESPN is launching a college football show with some dude named Josh Pate, who apparently is a big deal. Never heard of him. And Bussin' with the Boys, which is Taylor Lewan and who's the other dude? I don't know who the other dude is. Will Compton. So Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. I mean, that's at least, did Will Compton play? Taylor Lewan played. But like, so there you go. Like, there's another former athlete, at least one former athlete that's still, but again, he looks the part. So when you ask me, has the day of the former athlete as a sports analyst going away? No, because they're just choosing white ones. Let's just go ahead and keep it a buck. They're choosing white ones. Black sports athletes better start partnering. The problem is running the legacy media. Gil went to Mad Dog Sports and lost control of his own show. Well, that's kind of the deal. When you go to a legacy company, you normally have to relinquish some rights. So the fact that Gil, and I didn't know he gave it up for Mad Dog. I know he gave it up for Underdog as well. But be that as it may, if you want legacy media partnership, you're giving up something unless you have the McAfee juice. If you got the McAfee juice, and maybe even these Bussin' with the Boys dudes, maybe they were able to retain ownership depending on what's the show going to be called. If the show's going to be called Bussin' with the Boys, I'm not seeing a title for the show yet. If that title is Bussin' with the Boys, then I want to know who owns that show. There's no mention here in the article in regards to what the name of the show is going to be. It's going to air Fridays during college football season from college campuses across the country. Okay, yeah, that's definitely not going to be Bussin' with the Boys. That's definitely not going to be that. Okay, but see, this dude, Josh Pate, again, like I was saying earlier, you got to build yourself online and then the companies will come to you. Apparently, that's what this dude, Josh Pate, did. Pate has amassed a huge following on YouTube, becoming one of the most, let me get that so y'all can see it. Pate has amassed a huge following on YouTube, becoming one of the most watched college football creators on the internet. Compton and Lewan, two former NFL, so Will Compton did play, two former NFL players started their media careers at Barstool Sports before moving their podcast independent. So this is the blueprint now. Do it on your own or do it with a partner and use their clout to help build your shit up and then pivot when the time is right. Will Compton and Taylor Lewan weren't big personalities as football players. Lewan a little bit because he had tattoos and shit like that, but those dudes weren't seen as big personality guys. But they built that podcast up with Barstool. They leveraged the Barstool name to help build their shit up and build their clout up and their name up. And then when the contract was up, they flipped. They got up out of there. But they had already built up their shit off the backs of what Barstool already had, that now they could stand on their own and still leverage their name and clout to get sponsorships, to get their own shit popping. So that's how it is. And then Pate, apparently, is one of the most watched college football creators on the internet. So clearly he grinded it out, built the channel on his own, monetized it, ran the numbers up, probably has a few clips that went viral and leverage it that way. So now that ESPN has come calling. But my question is the black version of Josh Pate getting the same opportunity? Is the brown version of Josh Pate getting this opportunity? Is the Asian version of Josh, like we can go on and on and on. Is the non-white male version of Josh Pate getting this opportunity? Oh, you mean underdog? Yeah, it was underdog. So like, it's very troubling as someone that is not a white male in the industry that sees the play, tries to do stuff like this to tell y'all the play. It doesn't go that far because, again, until we're in the positions where we have hiring power and firing power, not much can be done. Because what if there was, I'm sure there's a black version of Josh Pate somewhere. The problem is the person who is the gatekeeper, will they put the same respect on the black version of Josh Pate as they did the white version? I think most of us know the answer to that. This media thing is dirty. This media thing is grimy. If you want to get into the content space now, or if you're wondering why you don't see people who look like me or likely you based on my own demographics on this channel, if you're wondering why you don't see people that look like me or you, it's because the gatekeepers at the top do not look like me or you. So I think it's a really good question in terms of, has the day of the former athlete as a sports analyst going away? If you're black, yes. If Ryan Clark can't survive, if Cam Newton can't survive, then yes. But then the other side can flip it, right? Because on NBC, they got Chris Sims up out of there and they brought in Mike Tomlin. But then they get rid of Tony Dungy too. Then they get rid of Tony Dungy and Chris Sims. I forget. It's too much. It's so much moving. So many moving parts to this thing. Here's another guy that had success at NFL Network and wasn't really a name like that, but just, again, had personality, looked the part, and a legacy media company came in and swooped in and gave him a chance, and now it's a wrap. Kyle Brandt exits CBS NFL Today. Again, a dude that was more leaning on the fact of he's a personality. He puts the E in entertainment. He's not really breaking games down. He's not really giving you hard-hitting analysis. He's not crunching game tape like you would want someone in that position to be. And that's kind of the problem, is that the structure is based in a way where if you are a former athlete, you know the game, you know the ins and outs, you know how to break it down. If you're going to put someone who is not a former athlete next to them, that person should have the ability to do some of the same things. I'm not expecting a Cal Brandt or a Peter Schrager to be able to walk into an NFL film room and break down tape like a NFL Hall of Famer. I would expect them, though, to be able to have a perspective that lets me know as a viewer, oh, that person knows ball. You don't need to know ball like a Hall of Famer, but you need to be able to convince me, someone who has been a lifelong watcher of sports, and now working in media. I've watched more sports than most people have in my almost 20-year career, than most people do in a lifetime. You have to be able to convince someone like me, and even casuals, that you know what the hell you're talking about. And regurgitating box scores, regurgitating points that were made on the Elon app is not the way to do it. So a legacy media company and CBS brought in Cal Brandt thinking he was going to bring that energy, that entertaining stuff, that personality-driven content that he was known for on the NFL Network, bring that over here to CBS because we're an old show with old people. And it didn't work. Because what works for one demo doesn't mean it's going to work for the other demo. The demo of the people that are engaging in Cal Brandt's content are not going to NFL Today and watching CBS. So when CBS gives Cal Brandt a bag to bring that juice over there to CBS, they're assuming his audience is going to come with him. It doesn't work that way because the internet doesn't work that way. But because you have people that are running these legacy media companies that are old, they think that way. So I'm sure Cal Brandt got a bag, salute, but it was never going to work at CBS. Never. Because the demos are too different. Your clips that go viral on the Elon app and on TikTok and on IG, that's not going to translate to CBS. The game is the game. Lakers in the house. Josh Pate just went through controversy for interviewing Trump for no sports reasons, and his reasons why didn't help. Oh, he's one of those. Oh, so he's MAGA. Oh, okay. I mean, that tracks. College football and all that tracks. Okay. I mean, that is it even more. Okay. So let's now take that information and let's take another step back. Ryan Clark wants us to believe that his back and forth with Peter Schrager had nothing to do with the back and forth that they had. Cool. I think he's full of shit. He's entitled to his opinion. He obviously should know way more than I do, even though we walked the same halls at one point in time. It's okay. Peter Schrager is now going to get a daily talk show. Now we have Josh Pate, who interviewed the president, now getting a show. If Ryan Clark still doesn't want to believe that his back and forth with Peter Schrager had nothing to do with him being let go, then he's ignoring what's right in front of him. Ryan Clark was let go because he doesn't look the part and he had beef with someone who does. Bottom line. The network is showing you who they are, whether it's having that panel that we saw, whether it's this, or whether it's employing the guy who just interviewed the president, which in no way, shape, or form is ever viewed as positive unless you're a white male. Most of the national media don't know ball. And the field exposed their knowledge with YouTube podcasts and guys who are scouts doing YouTube content, not enough attention span. I think there has to be a happy medium. There has to be a happy medium with that, right? Like, again, I'm not even expecting a YouTuber. You can't crunch enough film. You don't have access to the film, even though the NFL does a good job about, if you're willing to pay for access, you could pay to get game film. So if you want to immerse yourself, you can, but it's still not to the degree of what an NFL player has at their fingertips. So I do not expect a YouTuber, a podcaster, a dude on TikTok. I'm not expecting them to be able to crunch or break everything down to the nth degree like a current or former player. I just want them to be convincing that they know what the fuck they're talking about. That's all. Like when Draymond Green gets on his podcast, and I'm not changing sports, but just want to use this as an example. Where's that clip? Draymond, where does he go? Fuck. Where'd it go? Draymond had a clip where he basically, oh yeah, here it is. Pause that, no copyright. All right. So, Draymond Green believes LeBron James didn't join the Warriors because he couldn't get over their past rivalry. Quote, I ultimately don't think Bron was ever able to get over the history, and I understand it. I get it. Again, this is a current player that has a huge platform because of his personality and his antics and his perceived acumen, making one of the dumbest statements imaginable. And this is seen as good content. When I say we're the blame, this is what I mean. We are the blame. If anything, it should be the other way around. Draymond Green should not want LeBron James to join the Warriors because of their past rivalry, because Draymond Green is directly responsible for the greatest collapse in sports history, where the Warriors went 73-9, and then they lied at the direction of Draymond Green because he could not habitually stop kicking LeBron James and others in the nuts that entire season, to the point that he got suspended for Game 5. Up 3-1, suspended for Game 5, everything turned on that. LeBron and Kyrie got to cooking up, and it didn't matter after that. They ran them down and beat them 3 straight to steal a Larry O.B. and steal the title of greatest regular season or greatest team of all time. They snatched that from them. If anything, Wardell and Draymond should not want LeBron on their team because he did that to them. He broke them. He broke them. Made them go get Kevin Durant. Is he trying to tell me that because they went and got Kevin Durant and they beat him 2 more times, that's the reason why he didn't want to be a Warrior? No, he didn't want to be a Warrior because your team is ass. Even with Wardell, your team is ass because you're still on it. And the Warriors have bent over backwards to make you happy. And Wardell is too shook to tell the team to move on from him. That's why LeBron is not a Warrior today. He's not a Warrior today because the team ain't good enough. And the team ain't good enough because you're still currently on it. But because he gets to spin his narrative on his podcast, this is what he gets to say. Because this is all fake. It's all fake for numbers. Because you can't admit you took an L. Draymond can't come on that podcast and say, yeah, we tried our hardest, but we weren't good enough to get him. He's got to spin it. And what's the spin? I don't think Bron was ever able to get over the history, and I understand it. I get it. The history is all in LeBron's favor. It took y'all to get Kevin Durant to beat him. And he still snatched away the more important ring, which was the 73-9 year, when you were looking to cement yourself as the greatest team of all time. And because of your stupidity and your penchant for kicking people in the nuts, you couldn't secure that chip. Like I said, there's 4 truths when it comes to media today. There's the team version, there's the player version, there's the media version, and then the actual truth. Draymond is giving you the player version of his truth. And we have allowed people to call out and be able to get away with saying, well, this is my truth. Just because it's your truth does not mean it's the actual truth. All right, what else we got? I was going to get into some Wardell stuff. You know, Warriors owner Joe Lacob is focused on building the team for the post-Steph era. If that was the case, why did they trade all the youngins that they've drafted over the last 5 to 6 years? Like, come on. What Lacob wants to do, and this might get Warriors fans mad, but he wants to build the next team after Steph Curry. And Wardell's to blame. He chose Draymond over Clay. He chose Draymond over KD. And now he's stuck with Draymond. And nobody wants to play with Draymond. Nobody. Even before the Jordan Poole shit, no one wanted to play with Draymond. They wanted to play with Steph and Clay. They didn't want to play with Draymond. Anywho, we will probably wrap up there. Just wanted to make sure. This is a deep. I did not think we would be able to go as long as we had today, because there's not a lot of X's and O's and transactions going down. But I'm glad y'all have tapped in. Whoever has tapped in, if you have not already, hit the like button. Hit the like button on the way out. If you have not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. This is what I try to do here. Once a week, I pop on and live stream about sports, sports media, things that are going on in and around that atmosphere. So if you enjoy that type of content, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend, let them know that what we're doing over here. We're talking for ball knowers. If you know ball, this is the place you should be. If you just want cheap content, easy content, hot take content, this is not the place for you. If you want analysis, if you want giving you information of what really happens behind the scenes, like we did today in terms of showing you the cover-up of the NFL, the 49ers, and ESPN, and covering up Kyle Shanahan's accident, this is why you come here. And I know it's easy to just to listen to people yell and scream, and it's entertaining, but that's not me. If you're waiting for me to yell and scream, it happens every now and then, but it is not part of my shtick. I am an actual contrarian, not a fake one for clicks and views and retweets. So if you enjoy that type of content, feel free to tap in. I do this once a week. I have a podcast, the DCMD podcast is available where all major podcast platforms, type in DCMD podcast, it'll pop up. It's a twice nominated podcast. Again, we do shit different over here. This is not just a dude just talking. I bring high quality content, high quality product, and it's been recognized as such. Even though the numbers might not look like it at times, trust me, people know. So if you want to be part of this journey as we continue to grow this channel, as we're getting close to 900 subscribers and eventually getting close to 1,000 and fully monetizing this thing and keeping this thing rolling, tap in, be part of the journey. As you see here, if you're in the chat, I put your chats up. We can engage back and forth. So, yep, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Almost 2 hours in. We got to get the bed up, the music done by Mayfirst Music. Support him at soundcloud.com/MayfirstMusic. I go by the name of DCMD. This has been the DCMD YouTube channel. I'll catch y'all again next week.